Hello, everyone. So this is Sarah Christensen. I'm here from Therap, and you guys are here for the Quality Assurance User Group. Today we are doing more of a discussion panel format, and we have some panelists who are joining us who are going to talk about their quality assurance process in their agencies. So let's see. So we've got on this slide a list of who we have presenting and moderating today. So our presenters are from Goodwill of Southwest Florida and ARC of Union County in New Jersey. So I'll have them go ahead and introduce themselves. So if you guys can all just, we'll start with Robin, just share what your position is in the agency and kind of what your involvement is with Therap. That would be great.
Oh, okay. My name is Robin Anton. I'm the Quality Assurance Specialist at Goodwill in Southwest Florida. When we originally chose to go with Therap, I was part of the implementation team and training team, and now I use it for our QAs. Both we have the employment and our adult day training. That's my scope of using it now is just for QAs.
Perfect. Okay. Great. And then ARC of Union County. We have several people joining us from ARC of Union County. So if you guys could introduce yourselves, that would be awesome.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Christopher Farrell. I am the Director of Compliance for the ARC of Union County. I do have to apologize on behalf of Susan Luckman. She's not going to be able to join us at the moment. She's an assistant executive director. Her duties have called to go to other places. And Mr. Paul Kring is on his way, so he will be joining us shortly. My other amigo.
Hello, everybody. I am Stana Fiawu. I'm the Quality Assurance Specialist at the ARC of Union County.
And basically what we do at the ARC of Union County is we oversee in the QA department almost all aspects of Therap, soup to nuts. ISP, billing, MARs, training records. We manage it all.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for agreeing to be a panelist today. Our moderators, so that's going to be myself. My name is Sarah Christensen. I am a Senior Training and Implementation Specialist with Therap. And then we also have Shawnette Smith from Therap helping out. So,
welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. So it's going to be a great discussion.
Absolutely. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping before we really jump into the discussion. So we're basically going to have different questions that we're going to put up on the slides here. And our panelists are going to answer the questions. And then we can also take feedback from you guys. So if we get into a question about a specific part of Therap and you want to share what your agency is doing as far as your own quality assurance process, we would love to have you contribute that through the chat section. Shawnette is going to be monitoring the chat section, and as we get to the end of the slide and we have our panelists answer the questions, she'll kind of read out anything that you guys share that you want to contribute to the discussion. So we think that'll be a little bit easier than trying to deal with unmuting people. So everybody, it does come in here muted. If you do want to say something, then you can raise your hand or just type in that you want to be unmuted, but we find that most people kind of prefer to type, so we'll just go with that for the most part. And the other thing that I just want to let everybody know about is that we do have a Basecamp group for the Quality Assurance User Group. Basecamp is basically just a website that has things like message boards, file sharing, all kinds of stuff like that. So if you are not part of the Basecamp group already and you're interested in participating, just go ahead and send an email to myself or Shawnette. We've got our emails up on the screen, and because you registered for this webinar, you should have my email address due to that already. So, and we're going to post some files, I think, to the Basecamp after the webinar here that we'll be talking about. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the questions here. So the first thing, we're going to talk about kind of a couple more conceptual, just basic things, and then we're going to really just go in module by module, and our panelists are going to talk about how they do QA for each of the modules. So our first question pertains to individual record audits, meaning kind of how do they approach reviewing one individual's record comprehensively. So our sub-questions for this is just, does your QA department do these? If so, how do you select which individual's records you review? Do you have a way of randomizing it? Do you rotate and look at everyone in a schedule? And when you do these audits, what are you looking for, and what time frame are you typically looking at? So for this one, I think, Robin, if you can start, and then we'll have ARC of Union jump in with their responses.
Sure. I go through each individual review. Everybody gets done twice a year now. And every quarter I have a random selection. I put it in Excel and make it do its random formula, and we look on the IDF. We have a kind of a Therap cheat sheet that everybody uses. Our Adult Day Training Center, there's things in each field that have to be in there. Our pathways to work, same thing, they have specific data and where they have to put it, so I check to make sure that that is all in there. We're making sure for billing that the hours we billed, that there's a case note or ISP data for every note that we have billed for, that we were within time frames of submitting our reports, and our, if make sure that the waiver support coordinator got a copy of what is required. All of that is being checked. And T-logs, so I pull the individual T-logs also. And just ensure that all the required data is there in our time frames. For our Adult Day Training Center, everybody gets, like I said, done twice a year. But then as they come in new and they are paid for by the waiver instead of another funding source, within the first 2 months, their file is audited in case it doesn't get in the random quarterly. That's how we do individuals.
Great, thanks so much for sharing. Okay, so ARC of Union, if you guys want to go ahead and jump in.
All right, so as far as it comes to auditing the individual records, all right, so on a bi-monthly basis, I have Ms. Senya. She actually goes physically to the programs themselves, and she reviews any hard copies of pieces of paper that we don't necessarily store in Therap on a regular basis. As far as Therap is concerned, we audit the individual data form agency-wide twice a year. We do that in January and July or August, just basically making sure that all the fields that we want, none of them were missed when new individuals came in, because we have individuals that start programs and leave programs, fairly routinely. But we want to make sure that obviously we capture all of the demographic information, all of their diets, and all of their supervisional needs. So we'll run that twice a year. As far as when new individuals come in, they are audited right there on the spot. We make sure that all the data that we can have is put in there. All right, so as far as other records, we monitor all of the individuals' MARs on a weekly basis. We also monitor all of the prescriptions and MARs in general, like to make sure all the medications are entered correctly, all the prescriptions are there. We do that on a monthly basis. The ISP data, we're monitoring that on a weekly basis. Billing data, we're monitoring that on a monthly basis. What else are we looking at?
Yeah, so we'll definitely be able to get into more detail on those as we go through the modules, but I think that's
we don't audit the T-logs.
Yeah, definitely helpful response for everybody to hear kind of what your process is. So, Shawnette, do we have any comments from the audience?
We do. One question is if the presenters would be willing to share any of their cheat sheets that they utilize.
Yeah, so I got some files actually from Robin. And Robin, if it's okay with you, I was planning to go ahead and share those on Basecamp after the call here, so that people can
Sure.
see what you guys are using.
Sure. I can also just send you our Therap cheat sheets that we've made that is kind of a guide for the end user, where to put data, how to do it, kind of like a step process that we go through. I'd be happy to send that to you too.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be great if you can post that on Basecamp.
Okay.
That'll be really helpful to everyone.
We have a few more questions, Sarah. Approximately how many people are supported by each of these two organizations?
Oh, good question. Yeah.
All right, so at the Arc of Union, we support 100 individuals in our residential program, roughly 250 to 280 across all of our day programs, and then you can add in another 200 to 250 for our respite and child services. So ballpark around 500.
Yeah, and for Goodwill, between our adult day training and our employment services, it's about 200 people right now.
Great. Okay. Any other questions, Shawnette?
How many QA persons do you have checking the MARs and the prescriptions?
One. Me.
All right.
In reality, Senya again will spot check when she's actually in the programs. I share all of my reports that I put together with her, and when she's physically in the program themselves, if she finds a hard copy of a prescription that happens to be missing, she will upload it. She will also remind program supervisors that prescriptions are out of date, and she includes those in her reports. But as far as overseeing and auditing on a routine basis, there's one person and one person only that monitors all of how the meds get entered, or making sure that all of the MARs are signed for. There is an expectation, I should say, that the supervisors are checking their MARs on a daily basis. The assistant directors are checking their MARs on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. But as far as true auditing is concerned, that happens on a weekly basis out of my office.
Great, thank you.
We have one more question, Sarah.
Okay.
Kathy's asked, please state how many people files are referenced for each agency. One agency said that they review files twice a year, and please specify what files you are checking in Therap.
Well, so I think we're going to get into a bit more detail as we go module by module. So I think if we want to respond to that kind of towards the end, if there are still outstanding questions, because we're going to have a lot of opportunity to get into that, I think, as we address the other questions. So just in the interest of time, I think we'll go ahead and move forward. So this question I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on, but because I think our last webinar spoke a little bit more about this, but trend analysis is something that I'm curious about what your QA department involvement is in this. So is this something your agency does? How are you approaching trend analysis? What are some of the modules you're focusing on? I know GER is probably a big one for this. And then which reports are you running and what are you looking for?
At Goodwill, we're not really using Therap for the trend analysis. We do get some information out of Therap. We're not using the GER, but we input our incidents as incident other in a T-log right now. So we kind of analyze those. It's a tedious process right now until we get up to the GERs. But that's how we're measuring our incidents and safety. And we just did one for our incident committee. You know, who was involved? Is it the same person, maybe with the same instructor? Is it the same instructor that's always having people, you know, fall off the seat in the van? Is it So that's really how we're not really using Therap for too many trend analysis right now.
Okay, yeah, well, that's really helpful. Arc of Union, what about you guys?
All right, so at the Arc of Union, we do quite a bit of trend analysis with the GERs. We use GERs on a daily basis, and part of the function of the GERs and the reports that you can run, there's really a lot of useful information that you can filter through in Excel, and we actually produce trend analysis on a quarterly basis for one of our committees, which then gets filtered up to the executive director level. We also do trend analysis on all of our medications and all of our different types of medication errors. So there's a lot of trend analysis that goes on a monthly basis that's actually compiled, and we dive down and we look at various different types of medication errors. We're constantly trying to improve how we administer our meds, making it easier for staff, finding better, more conducive ways to eliminate as many errors as we possibly can. We're also starting trend analysis with a lot of documentation. We just had a mock or fake Medicaid audit, and they identified some things. So in the upcoming weeks and months, we're going to be doing trend analysis on how staff are taking notes as well.
Awesome. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Very good feedback. That's a great idea, the mock Medicaid audit. Okay. So next question, which I think I've got some files to pull up that Robin shared with me, is on kind of process documentation. So do you have written documentation of what your QA processes are? And I think Robin already spoke to this a little bit about the cheat sheet and some of the file review documentation. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up here a case file review. Bear with me while I grab this. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So this is an example of what they are using in adult day training. Robin also shared one from their supported employment of kind of how they are going through Therap. So they've got the different sections of Therap: individual homepage, individual data, contacts. So Robin, I don't know if you want to say anything about this or just kind of...
Nope, go right ahead, you're fine.
Yeah, so different things they're looking at for implementation plans of the ISP programs, what fields to really check through, different things about the reports and whether they're present. So we're going to share all this stuff on Basecamp after, and that's probably an easier way to go through it anyways, but this is a really good example, and I'm excited to see your cheat sheet, Robin, as well.
Yeah, I'll send that to you after.
Perfect. Yeah, and then Arc of Union, I think you guys mentioned that because you have is many in your QA department and your process is pretty rapidly changing, that you don't necessarily have process documentation because it's always evolving and changing.
Well, yeah. We are literally coming through on the other side of our fee-for-service changeover. We now officially have everyone in the agency in a fee-for-service model. There are no more contracts left, which is yay, absolutely terrific. But as far as like an SOP or a standard of what we're checking on a routine basis, unfortunately we don't have an SOP at this particular moment, because of how rapidly and evolving things are constantly changing here. So when a new need is identified, we'll go out, we'll develop an audit tool for that need, and we'll start auditing to that. But by the time that process is finished, we've identified 2 more things.
Yeah, I'm sure.
By the time that process is finished, we've figured out 4 other things.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. I'm sure anybody who's joining from New Jersey can relate to
pretty
that
much
transition. I think we have a couple other users from New Jersey.
It's not entirely uncommon for our entire department to change direction on Monday.
Definitely. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move into more of that module by module discussion now. So the questions you will see up on the screen will be the same. We've got the headers that say which module we're going to be talking about. So we're going to jump into discussion of ISP programs and ISP data. With a lot of the modules we'll be going through, of course, different agencies might be using the modules differently. So we'll start by just kind of identifying how your agency uses the module. Then how does your QA department participate in reviewing data in the module, and what are you looking for? What reports are you using, and when do you use reports versus looking kind of individual forms, actually pulling up each form one by one? And then how do others in your agency approach reviewing the module? So we know that QA department plays a big role for both of your agencies, but of course there are layers to the process, so definitely you can mention that. And then also I think it's helpful to point out if there's any automated QA features that you're taking advantage of in the modules. So ISP programs and ISP data, we met before this call to kind of discuss, and I think those are sort of separate in terms of how you QA ISP programs versus how you QA ISP data. So, and our next slide is going to be all about billing. So feel free if you want to mention billing related stuff, we'll kind of segue into that. But Robin, do you want to maybe start here?
Sure. For our ISP programs, we have several ISP programs. Everybody has like their IIP, which is done in they have an assessment, then the IIP, and it's done, of course, through the ISP program. That is used to, take their daily case notes and their, success for the day. We have set up our ISP program to help our instructors to where it asks them questions based upon the individual's goals, and they have to answer those questions, which then becomes the ISP data for that plan. We also use ISP programs to, each one of our classes has an outcome and an output and outcome, and we have set up an ISP program for our instructors at the end of the quarter to record the success of each individual in that class using that ISP program. We also use it for, we have an ISP program for our quarterly data meetings with the individuals, our supported employment. They use it, of course, for their case notes. They input ISP data in the ISP program, and we have one for both supported employment, employment services, or on-the-job training, depending upon what they're doing. Unfortunately, right now, they have to cut and paste that into the Department of Vocational Rehabilitative Services. It doesn't link up nicely. But then as far as reporting goes, the supervisors of both programs look at it on a weekly basis, make sure that there's, data in there, that it is answers what needs to be answered as far for our compliance, and that our program coordinator can write, the reports that she needs to write. So I only look, as far as QA goes, at that data and at the reports when I'm actually doing their review. If they're chosen as one of the random ones, or when we do everybody twice a year, or if they're brand new, then when they get their second month in. So that's kind of how we're using that right now.
Okay, perfect. And then Arc of Union, what does your usage of the module look like, and what's your process for QA?
All right, I'm going to tackle this, I guess, in two steps, the ISP program and the ISP data part. All right, so when it comes to ISP programs, we maintain basically two major types of ISP programs. The first ISP program that we maintain is our source document for all of our billing. Every single individual has an ISP that is basically linked directly with their service authorization in Therap. So therefore, we're never actually submitting a claim through Medicaid without appropriate documentation of us providing services. Then we also have programmatic ISPs, where the supervisors and assistant directors go in, and it's basically like a checklist or a check off to say that they've done X, Y, and Z, that they've reviewed this, that they've made sure certain things are taken care of. So as far as auditing the ISP programs, that's done on a quarterly basis. This is actually a really, really key factor to helping the QA model work. There, you know, I'm sure other people have heard this said, but I'm going to just say it again. Therap is a computer system, so it's only as good as the information that you put in. So we audit the actual programs themselves to make sure there's 100% consistency and compliance with how the ISP program was started. We make sure there are virtually no variations, there's no deviations whatsoever. If we identify any, which at this point there's maybe only 1 or 2 per quarter that we'll identify, we'll address it like right there on the spot. We'll fix it so that it aligns with our agency model. Then from there, when it comes to the ISP data, we are actually auditing that routinely on a week-to-week basis. We're looking for, number 1, was it completed? Number 2, was it completed by the staff that delivered the services? Number 3, was it completed the day that the service was actually delivered? And 4, if the note associated with that ISP data would pass agency and Medicaid standards.
Great. Okay. Yeah. So you guys have both agencies, I think, have a really robust process here. So thank you for sharing. Shawnette, are we getting any comments or questions from the audience on this?
Yes, we actually have 2 questions, and it's pretty much the same one.
Okay.
Do you guys, what do you do? Do you use ISP programs or data for shift notes? And if so, how do you do this so other staff go back easily and review those prior ISP data notes?
So I think I heard both agencies say that they're using them for shift notes or case notes. So I don't know if you've incorporated into like the training process of that other staff are expected to read those, or kind of what your process is there.
Can you ask the question again, please?
Sure. Basically, how do you guys train your staff to go back and easily view those notes from the day-to-day residential notes?
And just to okay. I think what that might be stemming from is that we have a lot of agencies, I think, who may have been using Therap for a while that may have used T-logs for daily notes, and T-logs, of course, has that built-in notification feature, whereas ISP data does not. So it's kind of something that you have to think through a little bit more as far as how are people going to go in and read them, how are other staff going to get the information that's recorded. So.
All right, so like answer that question, like our direct care staff aren't necessarily going back and reviewing ISP data on any routine basis. All of our direct care staff have basically been trained to enter their ISP data as close to the point of service as humanly possible. So in theory, and depending upon the program, in actual practice, staff will sometimes enter an ISP data point 2, 3, 4 times on a particular shift, all really depending upon what they're doing in residential that day. The supervisors, they're all trained on how to run various different reports in Therap to make sure that data's all there, to click on blue highlighted initials so that they can read their comments, make sure that they're good, make sure that they're passing standards, and that all of our drop downs are checked appropriately. But as far as the DSPs reviewing their own data, that doesn't really happen in our agency.
Ours either. Once they have it in there, they have it in there.
Pretty much.
Well, and I can just share just from my perspective working with agencies, I think a lot of the agencies that use ISP data for shift notes will tend to emphasize that anything that needs to be communicated out to others in their team can be done as a T-log. So that works really well. And then also reviewing from the individual homepage is probably the best. I should probably pull this up on the screen. But on the individual homepage in Therap, there's a modules section, and you can click into the ISP data section under modules to easily see kind of the recent ISP data entries. So I've definitely worked with agencies who have encouraged their staff to go in and review ISP data that way. And let me just drag this over. Oops. So that would just be under ISP data today or last week, typically is what people would be doing there. I'm also curious to see, now that we've kind of retooled the way that the reports roles work, we now have just like a view role for reports, whether we see people starting to give the reports role out more widely, just as a way of sharing information. So definitely will be interesting to see how that evolves. It's really new at this point. Okay, so I think we can move on, unless Shauna, if we have any other comments or questions.
There was a good question. So each state has kind of different guidelines on the comment section and how you're going to meet those guidelines. So I'm not sure exactly how we can answer that for the comment section, but what do you guys use as your guideline to verify that the scoring comments are going to meet Medicaid standards?
Well, at the Arc of Union, we've basically trained, when it comes to the general comment down at the bottom, we've actually removed the option of having scoring comments. Every one of our tasks on our ISP is just a drop down, and the staff choose the level of service that they delivered for that particular task. And then the general comment that we have down at the bottom, all staff are basically trained to follow the same model, which is I assisted with, and then they list out what they assisted that individual with on any given day.
And that's pretty much how Goodwill also does it. We have some very specific questions in the, or not question, but question and answer, if you will. And we also made for staff in their instructor binder, when it comes to doing the ISP data for the day, exactly, what was done today, what was, whatever the question might be. And we have examples of how they word it. Today I assisted with. And that's kind of how we train everybody when they come in.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you both for sharing that. So our next module we are going to talk about is billing. And I know both of you are doing billing from Therap. So if you want to talk a little bit about your billing audit process next.
Okay, so at Goodwill, I do billing audit every 3 months because of just the way that you bill for a month after, and basically I look at what was billed. I reports that are in Therap. Of course, I can't remember them off the top of my head, to make sure when they were billed, the hours that were billed. And the amounts, and then I check the RAs, and I match those together.
Can you clarify? Sorry, I'm not sure if people will know what that stands for.
Oh, the reimbursement. It just went out of my head. The reimbursement. Yeah, that one. Too many acronyms to remember everything. But and I compare it with that. I make sure that we received all of the what was billed. If there is someone that it says in process for and it wasn't caught by the billing supervisor or the contract coordinator, there's a few little hints that I can give them. Check the date of birth, check, whatever that could be. And we're just really checking to make sure that A, we've billed everything correctly, and B, that we've, maintained compliance and that we've received everything that we should have received.
Definitely, thank you.
All right, so at the Arc of Union, We have quite a few safeguards and audit processes going on as far as our billing module is concerned. We primarily bill off of our attendance. So we do have somebody who is checking all the clock-ins from residential, match all the clock-ins from day program, and they're following up to make sure that there's not any missing time or large gaps of time. Then as far as the billing is concerned, all of that is audited on a monthly basis. We audit how many units they have, how many units they use, to make sure that all the units were used appropriately and that we didn't go over in any one given week, and that we make adjustments accordingly, as well as making sure that we're also auditing all of our service authorizations to make sure none of them are expiring. If we do identify ones that are expiring or running out of units, we are reaching out to the appropriate support coordinators to basically, get us a new plan or get us more units. So there's a lot of routine auditing going on in almost every aspect you can think of for billing.
Awesome. And then I do want to share something that our team has developed that I think you guys may find helpful. If you go to the help and support site of Therap and search for billing audit guide, this actually goes through some of the reports that our billing team recommends, and just different things that they would recommend auditing in terms of billing. So again, just search for billing audit guide on the help and support site, and that is a really great resource that we have available. Okay, Shawnette, do we have any more questions or comments?
We do. For the ARC, are your billing audits done by the QA, or is it done by your accounting department?
Actually, neither. We have a whole dedicated billing department itself, and they're the ones who conduct those audits.
Nice. Okay.
So, and Goodwill, it's done. Our accounting department has no hands in Therap. We do the billing. Our contract coordinator handles all of that. She's the one that, makes sure that the attendance is there, that there's, punch in, punch out. There's a, case that everything is in line before she actually bills. So that's, and then I would catch it after the fact, after reimbursement. So, hopefully she's, doing it all right up front, but I'm not going to catch it. But it's basically right in, and she doesn't work in either program. She supports both those. She's not in either of those programs.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything else, Shawnette?
There was a question, I'm answering it right now. Just she saw your screen for the ISP data for week, month, and she wanted to know if that was part of the business intelligence, and I was letting her know that was part of it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so next module we're going to talk about is the individual data form, and I know that both of you guys mentioned this kind of in the initial part of our discussion. I don't know if you really need to say how you use the module. I think that's pretty standard, but just what are your audit processes around it, I think?
Again, the individual data, when I do my audits, I, check to make sure that they, contain everything that they're supposed to as far as compliance. Again, it's something that should be caught more so before billing and by the supervisor and program manager of both programs. I, read them, make sure they cover everything, and then when I give my QA report, I point out the things that are missing, and then we do a training based upon that. Our program is also looking to be CARF accredited in 2020. And we just had a mock audit for that. And one thing that's big this year in CARF is the full circle of, you identify the problem, now let's see some trends, and then what did you do to fix it? So we're using this program to implement new processes of what's going to be done, and the ISP data is one of the big things we're looking at.
Okay. Great. And then Arc of Union, I know when we met before, you mentioned that your QA department actually does a lot of the data entry on the IDF. So that's part
Correct.
of it.
The individual data form is actually updated on an ongoing basis. When something for an individual changes, like their adaptive equipment, their supervision needs, their diet, that information is funneled through, the QA department, and that's updated on an ongoing basis by a very few select people. But then as far as large-scale audits, as I mentioned, I think on the first or second slide, we do that twice a year in January and during the summertime, just to ensure that all the various fields and all the boxes, that nothing was missed. And if we do identify something that is missed, we'll reach out to the programs to try to get that information for us.
Great. Okay. So next we have.
I would also highly recommend for people who do want to maximize the individual data form that you limit the access to who can actually edit it to as few people as humanly possible.
Exactly.
If you open it up to all your program supervisors and everybody and their half sisters to be able to edit it, you're going to end up with an auditing nightmare within about 72 hours.
Yeah, it's definitely tougher to get consistency the more hands that you have in there, for sure. So next module, I think that this is only going to apply to Arc of Union. They don't use the Mars at Goodwill. So Mars, we talked a lot about this when we met before this call. You guys have evolved your process over time and seen a big change in the number of errors that you receive. So if you want to go ahead and talk about that, great.
All right, so when it comes to the EMARs, I'm going to start off with this initial statement. They are awesome. I completely wish that I had electronic MARs available to me back in the year 2000 when I was first promoted to be a program supervisor. It would have made my life infinitely easier. But as far as how we use this module, I mean, we use EMARs to just like any agency would use its paper, MARs. We have completely eliminated all paper MARs. Staff only ever use the EMAR. As far as meeting various licensing or state requirements, we have cleared all of those hurdles as well. And basically, so the process is the staff go to the individual, they go to record their data. We have the agency standard of give a med, sign a med. So we don't really tolerate the whole give meds at 8 a.m. and sign for it by the end of your shift. If you give meds at 8 a.m., the expectation is that you're signing for them in or around that 8 a.m. hour. This is actually audited as far as making sure that all of the boxes are signed for, all the documentation is there. That's actually done daily by the program supervisors and the ADs. But large scale, we are reviewing all MAR entries on a week-to-week basis. And definitely we are distributing that to the ADs and the programs for following up. We identify anytime there is a box that fell through the cracks, anytime staff are signing outside of our 1 hour window of opportunity, anytime staff are signing on days that they didn't deliver the med, anytime that a supervisor or another staff is changing who administered the medication. All of these things are captured and actual analytics are applied to them as well, and programs get whole compliancy scores with following agency policy in this matter.
Great, yeah. And I think you mentioned that you guys are using some of the reports on the report library to audit for those things. Like we have one that checks for the 1 hour window. And
oh yeah, there's one on that. There's one particular that I actually run every single week. I believe it's called the MAR, the individual's MAR reports and their medications. Yeah. It actually gives me all the data and information that I'm looking for. It gives me the name of the individual, the name of the medication, when it's supposed to be given, who administered it, who signed for it, when they signed for it, and then I use the magic of Excel to identify all that information.
Fabulous. Gotta love Excel.
I might get one.
And I forgot to check in, Shauna. Sorry if we got any questions about IDF. So we'll go through any comments or questions that we had about IDF or MAR in the comments.
Yeah, everything's good, Sarah.
Okay, no questions or comments for the group, so we can move on.
Just one question: is there a procedure or cheat sheet that you guys utilize for the MAR? And I think the reports has already been answered. That's what
When you say like a cheat sheet, like I would need like more information. Like it's pretty when you run the report in Therap, it's pretty much in black and white. There is no like cheat sheet necessary. Like
correct.
when you run a report in Therap, you can clearly see that Chris Farrell administered the med, but Paul Kring is the one who signed for it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think if you had 20 people who were doing this process, then it may make more sense to have like a step-by-step. But if it's just you, then maybe that's really not necessary.
Yeah, and I'll also be the first one to admit that when we first started auditing all of the MARs on a large-scale basis, it was a really, really daunting, time-consuming task. And then following up with everything, again, was a very daunting and time-consuming task. But we went through our growing pains, 2 to 3 years ago. At this point, I can have all of the agency's medications reviewed for last week and a report distributed within about an hour and a half.
Awesome. Okay. So health tracking, again, that's just going to be you guys.
Can we just go back to the MARs like one quick second? There's another piece of advice I'd like to offer.
Yeah, sure.
If your agency is considering using the Therap MARs, which again, I do highly advocate that they do, because it is wonderful. It makes auditing like 1,000 times easier. It is not a fly-by-night quick process. You literally, the best way that we discovered going about it was literally going program by program, group home by group home, day program by day program, and rolling it out slowly throughout the course of an entire year. We have 20 group homes and 10-day programs, and we would do 2 residential programs, like a month, maybe 3, depending upon their particular size. But really, within the process itself, there was a lot of pushback initially, but ultimately we did win. That the moment you decide to have the EMAR go live and active, the paper MAR has to go away. If you maintain dual systems, it'll turn into an absolute disaster very quickly. So the moment you say, staff, all right, EMARs are here, like literally someone of authority needs to go to that program and take all of the paper MARs out of the program.
I think that's true for a lot of things in Therap, or really any electronic system. So yeah, that's great advice that we often find.
Because otherwise the staff will always default back to using the paper.
Yeah.
So when you give them no other option but to use the electronic version, and the learning curve is very rapid. Staff, in our growing process, we figured out that the first month is going to be a train wreck. But by month 3, it's as if they have been doing it for decades.
Now, do you guys use the mobile app at all? I know a lot of agencies have that built into their kind of contingency plan.
There's a large scale debate in the agency about that. That report that I did talk. That report that I did talk about, the individuals and their medication administration, whatever the title of that report is, does actually indicate if a staff used the mobile app to sign for the MAR. We have noticed that some staff are doing it, but there hasn't been any like large scale agency directive either way at the moment.
Okay, so you have it enabled, but it's not something that you necessarily train them to use. Cool.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, and I love that we have that column. I think we added that a few months ago, and that's been a great addition to that report. Cool, okay, so health tracking, again, that's just going to be you guys pretty much. They aren't using that at Goodwill. So, I don't know if you want to speak at all about that, or We can also move on to the next on our list. We're getting a little low on time. It's just so much pearls, so many pearls of wisdom to share. So do we have anything about health tracking that Arc of Union?
We don't use health tracking.
All right, so the Arc of Union, we do utilize the health tracking. The three biggest modules under the health tracking that we utilize is the appointments, which, again, I totally wish I had 20 years ago when I became a program supervisor. We also use the vital statistics a lot, and we also use the height and weight tracking. We have a licensing regulation here in New Jersey where the individual's weights have to be monitored on a month-to-month basis. We also use the vital statistics to track all of our unique blood pressure monitoring orders, as well as when an individual like has a runny nose or is sick or the flu. Actually, we also use the seizure module. Thank you, Senya, for bringing that up to track all of our seizures. The biggest one that we do audit to is the appointment records. That's done, again, on a week-to-week basis and distributed to all of the programs. We're looking to make sure that whatever appointments that were entered into Therap were actually completed, that they've also scanned and attached the hard copy of the documentation that they received from the doctor. We also audit to making sure that the note in Therap matches or is descriptive to what actually occurred at the appointment. So staff can't come in and just type like annual physical. They actually have to type out like what occurred at that annual physical. Did they get new meds? Did a med change? Is there some new condition that's arising? And also we audit to what staff actually attended that particular appointment.
Great. And are you guys using the report library report for that?
Yes, it's actually the third one on the first page.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really good one because it tells you if there's a vehicle,
that report
if there's an attachment.
Yeah, that report is super helpful. It's literally called like appointment something, and it's I know because I use it every week. It's the third one down on page 1.
Appointment report, all appointment results for individuals. There you go.
Yeah, and that one's extremely helpful because it's not time limited like a lot of Therap reports are. So I can literally like look at an entire year at one given time.
Oh, yeah.
While a lot of other Therap reports say you can only review 6 months at a time or 3 months at a time or so on and so forth. But that one's very helpful because I can look at all the agency. I can basically look at all of the appointments across the agency or filter down to a specific individual and see all their medical appointments for 2019 and 2018 at the same time.
Great. Glad that's been helpful. Okay, so next one.
Yeah, I love that report.
It's super nice. Employment history. So this will just be Goodwill. You guys are using the employment history modules. I'm going to talk a little bit about your processes there.
What
webinars about this, but
yeah. As far as QA goes, again, what I use it for is, I check the IDF. I ensure all of our milestones are put into the employment module. So when they hit their, 60, 90, 150 transition, all of the payable milestones, they are put in there. Then our contract coordinator works in Therap and the VR, Vocational Rehabilitative Services Software, REBA, and that's where she actually does the billing for that milestone. I make sure that through the QA that we have billed for all of the milestones that are applicable and that we've been reimbursed for on-the-job training, because it really doesn't say so in VRs. So we just have to rely on our accounting a lot for QA for that. And another thing that's on our supported employment QA is the job detail. if they have terminated, is there a termination date in there? Is there a reason in there? As far as the actual job bank itself, we make sure that there's, that doesn't get quote unquote quality assurance reviews done. The supervisor or the program manager keeps up with that to make sure that there's, the contact person in there, exactly what they're looking for, any special requirements. I do look at that when I'm doing the QAs every twice a year, just to make sure that, we are putting that information in there for everybody to use. And that's really, so, it is individual based, making sure we do have all their data, but we're really just looking, case notes, make sure they have, the ISP data. It has, exactly what they've done in the month, the time is noted, and that they were uploaded into Reba. So that's really what we do for the employment history as far as QA.
Great. Okay. Shauna, how are we doing as far as comments? I know we've just got a couple of minutes left, so we are going to have to go ahead and wrap up soon here. We have a few other modules we wanted to talk about, but I think we'll have to probably cut it off here and just address comments and questions that are coming through.
Actually, I think everything has been addressed for the most part. Okay. Lauren would like to touch base with Robin because they're both located in Florida regarding the supported employment module.
Okay.
Great. And Lauren, if you want, you have my email address from the registration, so I think I may have already seen an email come through, so I can go ahead and email and facilitate that. I'd be happy to. All right, so I think we are at time here, so thank you so much to both Goodwill and Arc of Union for being panelists on today's call. We hope to do more of these panel type webinars in the future, so definitely anybody who's interested in participating in one of these, reach out to me, let me know. Any topic ideas you have or things you'd like to contribute to. And thanks again, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. You guys have a great day.
Have a good day.